Tell me about a paranormal experience that you've had. I'll go first. I was in this trade school right after I graduated high school when I was about 19 years old. One of the first things that I was told when I first got to that trade school was that there was this kid that hung himself in the dorm right next to me. And apparently because of that, there was a lot of paranormal stuff that happened on this property. So it was about 6 or 7 months after I was told this that I was hanging out in my space just trying to go to sleep. And this group of 5 people came up and started talking to my buddy who was in the space right next to me. All of a sudden, this guy brings up the kid who hung himself, and apparently everybody around in that circle just felt these chills go through their body. And they were like, hey man, like, you don't talk about him, it's bad luck. And so that conversation ended right there. Nobody talked about it anymore. I was working AM kitchen that week, which means that I work from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. And so I wake up at around 3:30, 3:40, get dressed, everything's normal. All of a sudden, I see this figure. At the time, I didn't think it was weird that I didn't hear any footsteps or anything like that. I just kind of stared at this figure and thought to myself, or who else has AM kitchen maintenance? Because nobody else would be awake at that time at 4 in the morning. And all of a sudden, I feel the figure staring back at me. I didn't think much of it because I thought that it was a student. I just kind of walked off and thought it was nothing. But as I'm walking out of this building, I pass my buddy who's in his space sleeping, and my buddy is shivering, like shaking, shivering, all this, like teeth chattering, everything like that while he's sleeping. And I thought that it was extremely weird. I kind of just like stand there for, a couple of seconds thinking like, God, he must be having a really bad dream. But I'm like, time to report to the kitchen. So that day, I reported to the kitchen, got off at around 1, and then just kind of hung out in the dorm until 4 when everybody else got back from trade. When my buddy came back from his trade, so he asked me, he says, were you in my space at like 5 a.m. this morning? I'm like, no, I had to be in the kitchen at 4 a.m. And he seemed pretty freaked out by it. He's like, nah, man, you're joking, right? I'm like, no, like I had AM kitchen maintenance. You could check the schedule that was posted in this like living room that we had, this main room. And yeah, I told him, I said, no, I was literally in the kitchen at that time. He tells me that there was this figure that seemed to be a little girl at 5 a.m. that he assumed was me because I had long hair at the time and I was only 5'5". But he says he woke up, saw this figure, stared at it for a couple of seconds, and then the figure just ran away. He didn't hear any footsteps, nothing. And then, he thought that was weird, but whatever, I went back to sleep. And then around 30 minutes later, he wakes up again to this girl, like, literally face to face with him, pretty much. He said that she was about 2-3 feet away from where he was at, and this little girl was just staring at him. And this time, they looked at each other a little longer. He said it was probably for about 10 seconds, and then the little girl runs away, doesn't hear any footsteps. He only hears her laughing as she's running away. And so, I'm freaked out at this point. And then I told my buddy, I said, hey, our other friend, he seemed to be having this really weird dream this morning. Like, maybe we should ask him. So we go up to this friend, and before we tell him anything about what we were experiencing, we ask him, we're like, hey man, were you like having a really weird dream this morning? I walked by your space and it was just weird. And he tells us that he had this dream where him and an old buddy of his that he hadn't seen for years walked into this cave. And that's all he would say. After that, he just like shut down and really didn't want to say any more part of the dream. That's my paranormal experience. If you guys have any stories like that or ones that are even scarier, tell me about it.